Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Shepherd Staff Plan, Analyze, and Tools and Settings webinar. Hi, my name is Rod Kiles, and I am the manager of Concordia Technology Solutions. I've been with the company for quite a while now, and it's really been good to serve churches all these years. It's been a blessing. Um, Joining me today is going to be my associate, Kimberly Moon. She is a software support technician, and she's also our field tester coordinator. So you guys may have worked with her before, either in support or in with field testing, and you may be aware of her. So if you have any questions or concerns at any point in time, please feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. Let's go ahead and go to the agenda. So these are kind of all laid out exactly the same way. So we start out with the outline, jump into our discussion, and then we'll have a question and answer session. At the end, if there are any questions left, Kimberly has done a great job answering questions as we go along. So please don't wait till the very end. Ask them as they come to mind. There's a control panel. Usually it's on the right-hand side of your screen. It has a little orange arrow at the top, which you can click to collapse and expand. And inside there's going to be a question box. So you can ask questions, and we'll answer those questions as we go along. Typically, we run the finance webinar series in 3 sessions, but since this was a brand new release, we decided to stretch it out to 4. The sessions have been running a little bit over an hour. There's not quite as much material in this session, so I'm thinking it'll be around 60 minutes. We'll see how it goes, so I'm just putting approximately 60 minutes on this session. So we're going to start out with tools and settings. So there's going to be multiple tabs across the top, and one of the top tabs is tools and settings. So we'll start out with the tools and settings, and it allows us to kind of configure our system to make sure it's set up the way that we want it to be, because if we're talking about finance and dates, and some of the different settings are really important. We're going to briefly discuss the finance here. I think we understand what it is, but we just want to reiterate it because there's a possibility you might change your finance here at some point in time. We'll discuss that process. There's bank statement reconciliation. Every church should be reconciling their bank statements. So we'll walk you through that process. And then we have other tools, and there's just a handful of those that we'll go through. Then we'll transition into plan analyze. So period analysis, the bank account balance analysis. And I'm actually going to talk about the bank account balance analysis out of order, but it's one of our plan analyze tools. Then there's activity search and ledger line search. So there's a handful of those tools we'll discuss. We've actually talked about some of the plan analyze tools already, but we'll go through and we'll cover all of that information. So are you ready? I'm ready. I'm excited, as you guys can tell. If you're ready, let's get started. So information you should know. I'm going to actually open up the software first, and then we'll go through this information you should know. So we'll go back to Shepherd Staff. This is the Shepherd Staff login screen. Everybody should be familiar with it, but if you're not, this is what it looks like. It allows you to log into the program. Everybody should have their own login. There we go. Everybody should have their own login. The login determines what you can and cannot do inside the software. And never share logins, because then it looks like somebody else is doing the work who may not be doing the work, or if a mistake happens, it's impossible to track down who made that mistake. We haven't released any updates since the 18th, but we are working on another service pack. So as people report things and communicate things to us, we're making tweaks and changes in the software. So the current version is version 9, 2023, 10/18. It's year, month, date, so you can kind of tell when something took place. So I'm going to go ahead and log into the software. So I'm going to click continue. And that's going to take me into the program. Across the top is your file menu bar, followed by your main menu bar. And we're going to go into finance. So once we're in the finance module, our focus today is going to be, I guess you'd say, kind of like the middle tab, plan analyze. in the Tools and Settings tab here on the right-hand side. So I'm going to click Tools and Settings, and this takes us into our collection of tools and settings. So when we went through the redesign, there was lots of things that we thought about when it came to like, how can we restructure the software? One of those main things is, hey, can we clump together the utilities and the tools and the settings so that if you are working with finance, you literally go to one place to access those tools, or if you're working with membership, you go to one place to access those tools. And that's how we settled on this concept. So we're going to start with settings. To be able to make a change to a setting, you will check the little box here and then it'll open those items up. It starts out with the finance year, so I want to go back and show my finance year slide and just reiterate what a finance year is. And I think when it comes to like finance year or fiscal year or financial year, we kind of use the terms interchangeably, like you can exchange one for the other. Shepherd Staff uses finance year, but I hear people call them financial years, and I hear people call them fiscal years. And I know there's a little bit of meaning, but let's just say that we're using them interchangeably, and finance year is what we use in Shepherd Staff. What is a finance year? Finance year is a 12-month accounting period used for financial reporting purposes. So we're kind of bookending our reports. The majority of the reports, some can go outside of finance year, but the majority of them are, within a single finance year, and then you're doing comparisons within that finance year. So finance year, they may or may not start on January 1st. I'd say the majority of the churches we talk to run January 1st through December 31st, but there's lots of churches that use non-calendar finance years. So they may start in August, or they may start in May, or they may not start till October 1st. So it's common that they always start on the first of the month, and it just depends on who's in charge of your books. Kind of decides this finance year thing. And they're referred to by the end date year. So if you're in a calendar fiscal year, it's real simple. It'd be 2023 because everything's within that calendar year. But if it's a non-calendar year, and say you're going August 1st to July 31st of 2024, that would be the 2024 finance year at that point in time. So just a little information on finance year. Let's go back to our Shepherd Staff software, and we have finance year here at the top. One thing that we want to make clear is how you close your finance year. So there's definitely been some confusion over the years. There's people who will go in and change their finance year instead of using the close finance year option or running the year-end option. Over the years, we've been trying to clarify, exactly what is a year-end and what does a year-end constitute. So we've been kind of, I'd say, suppressing the terminology year-end. And we're down to the point that literally year-end is only done in the finance module. When you get to the end of the year, so if you're on 9.0 and you get to 12/31, you get into the next year, you've closed out all your books, you've entered in all your transactions, you've run all your reports. You won't go here to the left under settings, you'll actually go to close finance year here. You'll click that and you'll click the start button, and that will close your finance year. So this setting over here for finance year is if you are changing your finance year, if you are transitioning from a calendar finance year to a non-calendar finance year, or from a non-calendar finance year to a finance year. So that's what you would be doing here with finance year. And I guess technically you also could be setting up your finance year for the very first time, but it's if you are changing your finance year. It's not if you are doing the year-end thing that we do on an annual basis and you're closing your finance year. So that's what these dates are right here. So typically you would never change those once you have them set up, unless you're changing how your church is reporting and communicating through a fiscal year at that point in time. So If you are going to change from a calendar year to a non-calendar year, you can definitely give us a call. What you would do is you would change your finance year here to that non-calendar year, reopen the prior year, and then close the year again. And we're going to have instructions out on the internet. I don't know if anybody is in the situation where they're changing finance years on October 26th, but we're writing a Help Center article to clarify how to change your finance year from a calendar year to a non-calendar year or vice versa. Okay, so there is sales tax, and sales tax works with our accounts receivable system. So with the accounts receivable, you have items and fees. Those may or may not be taxable. And if they are taxable, you'll put in a sales tax rate when you create that item or fee and attaching it to a individual, it'll go ahead and apply that tax rate to it. So that's what the tax rate is. Below that, there's notify me, and you can tell it how many days you want to be notified before a recurrent transaction is due. You've noticed this red eye, or some of you may have noticed this red eye up here at the top. And I've got recurrent offerings and recurrent activities. Those recurrent activities are checks, payments, receipts, or journal entries that are set on a recurrent basis. So I say, hey, remind me 3 days in advance so that I can kind of get an idea that those are coming up. You know, it might be a monthly thing and you want to know a couple days in advance just to kind of, you know, give you a heads up, have this little red eye appear to kind of warn you, hey, make sure you take care of that business when you need to. Okay, so those are the first 3 settings there. For the 4th setting, there's term to use for a set of accounts. And let me go back to my slide here. So in this release, we wanted to clarify the fund book concept. So in the finance module, a fund or a book, the way we are communicating is a collection of accounts and transactions. Now, there's people who feel strongly about the word fund, and there's people who feel strongly about the word book. We were using fund for all of those years, and there was definitely some confusion with fund in finance versus fund in contributions. And lots of times people would set up their list of giving funds in the contributions module, jump over to the finance module, and set up that exact same list in the finance module. And that is not the way it's supposed to work. Most churches typically have one finance fund or one financial book. You can have more than one, but typically you just have one. So you don't want to kind of make that mistake. So we've incorporated the option to say, hey, let's call it a book instead of a fund. But some people feel the other way, so you definitely have the option to do that. So the term is user defined in Shepherd Staff version 9.0. And if you're using more than one fund, each user may want to set a startup fund. So if you have your general fund or your church in there, and you also have like a school in there, which fund or which book shows up, excuse me, which fund or which book shows up when you are creating or navigating through the software, you may want to set that as a default. So let's go back here and, excuse me just one second. Thanks for holding, everyone. I'm gonna have a little frog in my throat. Okay, so when you're inside the system, you can change it from fund to book or book to fund. Once you do that and click save, so I changed it the other way, so I'm gonna change it back. You have changed the term used for a set of accounts. This change will not take effect until you exit and restart Shepherd Staff. So I'm gonna click OK, and I'm gonna exit. I'm gonna reopen Shepherd Staff. There we go. I'm gonna log in and open up Finance, and then the terminology will change throughout the software. You'll notice how it says book here for your book selector. It'll say book on your reports. It'll just be book all the way throughout the software. So you just kind of want to decide exactly how you want that term to show throughout the software. So let's go back to tools and settings. Then also, it says startup book now. You can tell the system which book you want to use when you start the finance module. So I'm going to close finance, reopen it. And then you'll notice how it says book, and then it says dedicated fund 2. So if this was like a school, then it would always start with school. So you just want to make sure that you're picking the one that saves you a few clicks here and there if you're using more than one book. So I'm going to change mine back to general operations, since that's the one where I have all my information inside of the system. Okay, so let's go back to tools and settings. So user specifics, startup book, then there's closing your finance year. That's the utility you'll use to close your fiscal year at the end of your fiscal year. So when we get to January 15th or 20th and you've gone through and you reviewed everything and everything looks good and you want to close your finance year, you'll go here and you'll close it. If you close it and then you're all of a sudden, wait, hold up, meant to correct that one transaction, you can reopen your finance year, make that change, and then go back and close it again. So depending on how far you've gotten into the year, at some point you don't want to go back and reopen the prior fiscal year, prior finance year. What you're going to want to do is just enter a correction into the system, and then from there you'll just use that as an adjustment. Okay, so below that is bank statement. So I'm going to go back to my slideshow, and I have a few comments here on bank statement. So the bank statement reconciliation. So we used to call it bank account reconciliation, but it's really reconciling bank statements, and there are some things in there to help you reconcile your bank account, but we've kind of moved that into another part of the software. So we're tweaking this a little bit to make sure that the focus is like the main thing is the main thing. So bank statement reconciliation is used to verify transactions cleared the bank, is used to verify transactions that have cleared the bank. So you'll want to complete your bank statement. I'm going to have to fix my wording there. I've been saying bank account reconciliation for a long time, but you're going to want to complete your bank statement reconciliation monthly. Every month you'll get a bank statement and you'll want to reconcile it. You'll want to complete this 1 month at a time. There's definitely time we've heard from customers and they're trying to reconcile a year's worth of transactions. Really, you want to reconcile one bank statement at a time. It's the easiest way to get it done. If you're going to catch a mistake, it's a lot easier to do it with 30 transactions instead of 360 transactions. And you just kind of want to work through it, going through the process. And I'm going to show you guys how to do a bank statement reconciliation, of course, here in just a few minutes. Then after that, there's new related options, which you guys can see on the screen. We've got reopen last reconciliation, and we have reprint reconciliations. And I put posted in 9.0 and beyond. So in the past, once you completed that reconciliation, it was a done deal. It was locked. And we understand sometimes people make mistakes. So we've added in the ability to reopen the last bank statement reconciliation. Also, at times people would lose, or the printer would jam, or something would happen to the posting statement for your reconciliation. So we've added the ability to reprint the posting report, and you can just go into the software and do that. And I'll show that as well. One thing to note, this is just for the bank reconciliations done in 9.0. So even if you posted all of your ones from 8.0, 8.1, 8.2, so on and so forth, all the way up to this version, those won't be part of this utility. It'll just be the 9.0 reconciliations that you'll see inside of this utility. So going forward, you'll be able to reprint those bank statement reconciliations. Okay, so I'm going to switch back to Shepherd Staff, and we're going to do a bank statement reconciliation. So what the bank statement reconciliation does is it allows you to see transactions for a time period and then mark those transactions as cleared. So I've got my bank statement here, which is like a fake bank statement for my dummy data here. But what you'll do is you'll start and you'll say, okay, well, which bank am I reconciling for? So I'll say Central Trust Checking. Then at that point, it'll show me all of the transactions that have not been reconciled. So you shouldn't have a whole lot of these. Like the reconciliation should be an ongoing process, and you should be marking those as cleared, stating that, hey, I verified that the transaction that I entered in Shepherd Staff matches the transaction that took place at the bank. So when this comes up, what you can do is you can narrow the results down. So mine said I had a transaction going back to 2017. That's a lot of transactions to take a look at. So what I'm going to do is I am going to look at my bank statement. I'm reconciling for the month of August, and when it comes to checks, it can take time for those transactions to clear the bank. So you don't necessarily want to use the date that is on the bank statement. You want to go back in time just a little bit. So I'm going to go to July 15th of 2023 so that if there's any transactions that cleared the bank after they were written and there's a little bit of gap there, I'll make sure I catch everything. Then on your bank statement, you'll take the beginning balance, and mine is $544,322.71. Okay? And I've got an extra zero in there. $544,300, that's still not right. $544,322.71. There we go. Okay, then I can set my end date. So my end date is going to be the end of August, because this is the August reconciliation. Then I'll enter in my ending balance. 550, 216.74. Okay, and that number looks right. Okay, so then at that point, I'm going to see a difference. And some bank statements will show you the receipts and payments and give you a different amount at that point in time, like what the change was when it comes to your bank statement. Hi, Marcia. I'm going to save this. Marcia asked like how I got to the bank statement. So I'm going to save this and close it and go back just a second because I might have gone. I'll do that a little fast. So to access the bank statement reconciliation, you'll go into the finance module, you'll go to tools, and then underneath bank statement, you'll click bank statement reconciliation and click start. So then I'll select my bank account. And since I saved it, all of my information is here and I'm ready to continue. So you want to make sure that you're entering in a date range that is wide enough to show you the transactions that you need to clear. You don't want to miss one because then your balance will never go to zero, but you'll also enter your starting balance and ending balance from your bank statement. So the top part is your bank statement information and the bottom part is what we're reconciling. And this bottom number is red. We're trying to get that number to zero. You're welcome. So the difference should be zero. If the difference is not zero, we got a problem. This is going to be the research we're going through. But we'll also be able to see payments, receipts, and journals, and that information is on your bank statement as well. So depending on the process, you may need to search for a transaction. You can select all transactions, but I'm going to unselect all because we're going to go through and make sure that the one we have matches this one. the transactions that we have on our bank statement match the transactions in our system. A thing that we've added is the ability to edit a transaction from this view. So if, say we had a typo and we made a mistake, then what would happen is we could go in here, edit it, and then make that change and then move forward. So we wouldn't have to leave the bank account reconciliation and then come back to the bank account reconciliation. So edit, post is closing your reconciliation. Clear is just clearing a transaction. You can click on a transaction, click the clear button. I'm going to do mine with the keyboard to kind of speed up the process just a little bit, but you can use the clear button, and of course you can double click on a transaction as well to clear or unclear that transaction. But then there's a save button, which would save your changes. So if you were working on this and you needed to go back and review something, you could save it and then come back, just kind of like what I did. Then there's export, and then there's also print. So you would print before you post this report. So I'm going to grab a pen out of my drawer here. Okay. And what I'm going to do is on my bank statement, I am going to go down and mark each one of the transactions on my bank statement as I mark it cleared here in the software. So in this view, there is the option to sort by your column headers by clicking on them. So we have P for payment and R for receipt. I don't have any journal entries inside of this transaction, or inside of this reconciliation. So mine are all P's and R's. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with the first one here. So 6192 is my first check. So I'm going to click here. Let me uncap my pen. There we go. So 6192 for $67.21. And then I can press the space bar, and I'm going to put a little check. Then I'm going to go to the next one, 6191. Oh, my report's actually in document order here. There we go. So I'm going to change my sort order, 6191, and then put a check by that one. Then 6190. And then 6189. 6188. 6187. 6186. For $1,140.84. 6185, 6186, 6188, 6187, and then I have a receipt for 690. I have a receipt that is 698. And actually, these are in date order. I'm going to sort this by date. I'm wrong again. These are actually in date order. Perfect. $811, $699. Then it's $814, $6196, $6203, $6202, $6201, $6200, $6200, $6194, $6195, $6199, $6198, $6197. $6205. Yes, you can clear all. So I'm not going to clear all now that I've started checking, but yes, you can clear all by using the clear all button here at the upper right. 205. And I do know that some people clear all and then uncheck the ones that aren't needed at that point in time. Okay, then receipt number 700, 701, 6214, 6215, 6213, 6212, 6211, 6210, 6220, 6219, 6218, 6217, and 6216, 147.19. And the difference is 0. So my difference is 0. That means all of my transactions match what's on my bank statement, and scream a woo-ha at that point in time. So that's a good sign. At that point, I would save just in case. Then I would go to print. And with the print option, I can do default. I can show cleared activity only, and I can show uncleared activity only at that point in time. So I'm going to use the default option. And then this is going to be my bank statement report my bank statement reconciliation report at that point in time, giving me the date range that I have selected, my statement beginning balance, the items that I've cleared, and my ending balance and the difference of 0. And then I see those transactions that are cleared on here and the ones that were in the view that are uncleared. So I can see more information there. So at that point, I would print it, and I could print it, or I could send it to PDF, or however you typically do that. So I'm going to close. I'm not going to waste the paper on this one. But then at that point, I would use the post button. This process is not completed until you post it. So once it posts, then the transactions will go from paid or completed to cleared at that point in time. So post this reconciliation, setting all the marked activity to cleared. So I'm going to say yes. The reconciliation posted successfully, so that's great news. Then at that point, I'll go here to the upper right, and I'll just close my bank statement reconciliation. And then lots of people, what they'll do is they'll go to their activity for that bank account. And then they'll take a look to see that those transactions are cleared. So mine is sorted by status. I'm going to sort mine by date so that I can see those cleared transactions. I'm just going to reverse sort by date so that I can see those cleared transactions here in the view. So at that point in time, and I'm going to let, that's a good question. Let's see. So if I go back to other reports or tools and settings, and then open up the next bank account reconciliation, then it looks like it doesn't carry forward the information. You guys can post feedback on what information you'd like for it to carry forward, and then we can pass that information on to the development team. Okay, so I'm going to close this. And there's a couple other things I want to show, actually 3 things I want to show in relationship to the bank statement reconciliation. So I posted this, and I'm like, oh, wait a second, I need to reprint the report. So then there's reprint a reconciliation report. So I click on that and click start. Then it'll bring up my window where I can select my bank account, and then I can select the bank statement that I want to reprint. So then I click print, and then underneath print, underneath print, what previews is a report that I can then print at that point in time. So then I can go to print and just reprint it. So I'll close that. It's only going to show the ones that you've done in 9.0, but we'll be building going forward, and then you'll be able to access those reports. If I posted and at that point in time, I made a mistake and I'm like, wait a second, I cleared this one deposit when it was the wrong deposit. I could then reopen the last reconciliation. So click on reopen the last reconciliation, click start, select the bank account, and it's going to look in order of when it was reconciled. So the utility reopens, unposts the last bank statement reconciliation for the selected bank account. We definitely recommend backing up because if you go through and you unclear everything and you really meant to clear it, the only way to reverse that is to either restore backup or re-clear those transactions. So it'll give you the date, it'll give you the statement begin date, the end date, and the beginning and ending balances so you can match that to your bank statement. But then you can reopen it, say yes. Okay, you can now modify and repost it. So we're back in that prior state and click start. Then I can select the bank and I can go through and redo that reconciliation or fix that transaction, whatever I need to do at that point in time. So there are some people that like to see all uncleared, and I'm going to go ahead and post this again. Post, yes. Okay, so I've got those cleared transactions in here. There are some people who like to print out a list of all uncleared transactions once they get to the end of a bank statement reconciliation. So we'll go to 5 other reports here. Actually, we'll go to plan analyze, and this will be the first of the plan analyze items we're going to take a look at. So we added a thing called bank account balance, and like internally we call it bank account balance analysis. So at this point, you could select your bank account and it'll show you the uncleared payments, receipts, and journal entries. And it'll show you checks and EFTs for our payments. Then it's saying, okay, well, this is the current balance in Shepherd Staff. This is the net of our uncleared activity. So that's the difference between, I guess you could say your positive and negative items because journals can be either way, but this is the net of your uncleared activity. And this is what we'd expect to be at the bank. So like, hey, this is the current balance. This is the uncleared activity. This is what should be at the bank. And if your uncleared activity is accurate, then this is what would be at the bank at that point in time. So this is a new feature. It's something that we think we're hearing from customers. Like when customers have questions and concerns and how do we match this up with the bank? This utility gives that that ability. So these are all of our uncleared transactions in this account. I know I had some that went back to 2017. You shouldn't have transactions that go back that far, but this is dummy data, so that's kind of what's going on with that. But then at that point, you could export it to Excel for further examination in Excel, and you could also print it at that point in time. So this is going to be an additional tool that we think customers will use in conjunction with their bank statement reconciliation. Okay, so let's go back to our slideshow. And oh, I should have read this slide first. So bank account balance analysis, BABA, works with bank statement reconciliation. It shows all unclear transactions for a bank account. It shows the balance expected at the bank. So let's go ahead and go to other tools. So there's a few other tools that are inside the tools and settings area. So other tools is a collection of powerful but seldom used tools. It allows you to clean up your finance data. So sometimes people have the software for a really long time and you've got a bunch of data in there and just want to clean up that data. And sometimes it's necessary to get rid of that data if you want to clean up some accounts as well, because the transactions are an anchor, the transactions are an anchor to all the other pieces of data that are inside the system, like accounts and vendors. You can't get rid of that if you've got all those transactions in there. I prefer you keep, 10 years worth of data at least. I prefer you keep it all, but I'd say try to keep 10 years of data inside of there. You can combine transactions for 2 vendors. Sometimes vendors get entered into the system, and there are two that are spelled just a little bit different, but they're really the same individual or the same organization. And this combines transactions for those two vendors. Then recalculate beginning balances. So, and I've got some notes on recalculated beginning balances. We did have a recalculate tool before, but I'll talk more about that here in just a second. This is not something we should just be running just to run. These utilities should be done in very specific scenarios, very specific situations. Okay, so let's go back to the software and go to tools and settings, other tools, clean up your finance data. We're talking about purging information, so you want to make sure to back up before you run this utility, and then say yes. So once we've backed up, then we have the option to delete payments, receipts, and journal entries. Delete payments, receipts, journal entries, and budgets prior to a certain date. So keep as much data as you possibly can or possibly stand to keep. The more data, the better. Like it doesn't cost you anything, but if you really need to delete it, this is the utility that allow you to delete it. This would be deleting transactions and budgets. There's an option to delete inactive accounts with no associated activity in any fiscal year. So if you hold on to 10 years worth of transactions, that means anything that any account tied to those transactions could not be deleted until you got to the 10th year. So you just want to be careful with that. Delete inactive vendors with no associated activity in any fiscal year. That would also mean you hold on to your vendors for 10 years. And then delete purchase orders for calendar years prior to, and then you could select the date at that point in time. So once you've kind of figured out exactly what you want to keep and what you want to get rid of, you click continue, and then that would allow you to purge that information from the system. I'm going to hold on to all of my data, even though it's dummy data and it's just stuff, but I'm going to hold on to all of my data. Then combine transactions for two vendors. I don't have duplicate vendors in my system, but you could find the first vendor, and then so this would be the current vendor and this would be the new vendor. So, and then you can review the information, then you could say combine your vendors. Combining of the two vendors cannot be reversed. So once again, please back up before running these tools, because if somehow it's a mistake and you select vendor A instead of vendor B, and those should be reversed, then now you've merged that data. Reversing it can only be done with a backup at that point in time. It would be very difficult to go back. Like this data goes back to 2012. It'd be very difficult to dig through 11 years of history and correct that information at that point in time. So I'm going to say no, and no vendors were combined, and click cancel. Then recalculate beginning balances. Now, the recalculate beginning balances, it's a little different than the tool that we had before with rebalance. So recalculating beginning balances centers around beginning balances. We redesigned how we created reports and created numbers and totals and stuff like that. The beginning balances and the ending balance are still very important when you're working with these, but we go back and look at the prior fiscal year's beginning of balance, apply all the transactions, and then verify the ending balance for the prior year, which becomes the beginning balance for the current year, 2023, at that point in time. So we're calculating more things on the fly, so you really shouldn't have to run this utility at all. And if you do, please contact us, letting us know. Like, there might be something going on with the software. If you've got to run it, something else has occurred, and we need to verify what's going on with the software. So I'm going to say no to that. Then, so that's other tools. Let's go back to the slideshow. Plan, analyze. Plan, analyze is literally that. Like, this tab contains a small collection of views and utilities, and we're going to use these to plan for the future, like the budget stuff that's in there. And analyze, we're going to take a look at the past and analyze in conjunction with planning for the future. So it's a plan, analyze tab. It's a collection of utilities and tools that we simply didn't have in the prior version. And there's some neat ones in there. So period analysis allows the user to analyze in and out financial activities across a time period aggregated by a time period, then by a grouping. And when I was writing that sentence, I kind of smiled to myself, and I was like, man, that one's a mouthful. So let's take a closer look. So within plan analyze, we have period analysis, and period analysis is kind of like an Excel spreadsheet in the ability that you can kind of pivot information and kind of turn it and filter it and get the information to be what you want it to be. Like you're not, or not be the way you want it to be, but view and look the way you want it to look. So, so operations, that's our book. Then we can select how the money is coming in or going out of the software. So, or coming into the church or going out of the church. So there's income, expense, dedicated in, dedicated out, but then there's also a combination of the in routes of income and dedicated in and the out routes of expense and dedicated out. So let's say we're going to do income and dedicated in. So we say, okay, well, these are the accounts that we're going to put into this view. Then we can state the number of years that we want to include. So I'm going to click the Find button. Then at that point, I can aggregate it by month, which is going to be my item across the top, and then literally, and then by, and I can group it, and that's going to be down the left here. So I've only got one, I guess, major grouping, so I'm going to do minor grouping here. And then that's going to be down the left at that point in time. And if I want to further split these out, I can do them by calendar year at that point in time. So education, 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 those are for 2020, 2022, and 2023. And then funds, which is a minor group, which is all of my giving funds, 2021, 2022, and 2023. So you may or may not want to do by calendar year, but this is by major group. I'm going to switch that to account, which I think probably makes a little more sense, because you can say, okay, well, this is over the last 4 years aggregated by month. And this is what was brought in for each one for the month. And then if I wanted to say, okay, well, this is calendar year, and then I could compare the calendar years for that income account, for that fund, or for that dedicated account. So this would be coming in. If I was going to look at the going out, then I could switch that. Then I could see the amounts that were going out. And this is all electric. These are the years, and these are the amounts. And I can view that all right here. So I can kind of aggregate it in by years and by months, and kind of move this around. So I think it's neat that we added in a quarterly option. There's lots of accountants who use the software, or former accountants, corporate accountants who use the software, and they see the data in quarterly segments. So to be able to show this in quarters is just exciting at that point. And then you can also say aggregate by calendar, by calendar year. You'll notice when you do that, the year option over here disappears, because we flipped it again at that point in time. We're saying, okay, well, we're gonna group across the top here by our calendar year. So I think there's going to be some people who really like this period analysis. So instead of having to take the data, dump it into Excel, and then massage it in Excel, you can actually do it in the software right now. So that's period analysis. After period analysis, we have a couple of search tools. So there's activity search. And activity search allows users to search for transactions by any transaction type. So we have something that's just a little different here. So you'll notice when you're inside the software that our activity is almost always broken out by its type. So payments are in their own view, receipts are in their own view, journal entries are in their own view. When you go to reports, payments and receipts and journal entries are in their own registers. Now there's the general ledger report, but that's going to show you all of the transactions at that point in time. The plan analyze activity search allows you to search for a transaction across your system, basically. So you could search by one or two options, and it could be an and or option. It filters by the last 36 months. Excuse me. Underneath search, though, you could enter in a date filter. So you could uncheck this, and literally your search could be a date filter at that point in time. You can tell the system which book you want to view. You can tell it what type of status you're looking for, and you can add in a filter on your transaction type if you'd like. Now you'll notice across the top there's document number, date, amount, description, vendor. Those are dark, like those are bolded headers. So those are the ones where you could literally type in one of the search boxes and it would filter what you're seeing below by that piece of information. So if there's a certain description you want to search for, you could just type that in, or a certain vendor you want to search for, you could just type that in at that point in time. So there's definitely some power to this utility, especially when you're searching for transactions. And we think this is going to allow you to jump to this area and speed that up, just kind of speed up finding a transaction, because you'll be able to type in the number and just find that transaction, and then double click on that transaction. View it and edit it, void it or stop it, whatever you need to do at that point in time. So it's kind of like a new one-stop shop for finding a transaction. You'll still have the option to go to accounts and find your account, and then double click on it and go to that account ledger. So if you know where the transaction is, it's in said account, you could use the search inside of that ledger. But this is a whole nother option here, right? Okay, so that is activity search, and kind of like akin to it or a cousin or something like that, we've got the ledger line item search. So we know that transactions are made up of line items, and you may know the line item, but you may not know the transaction, or you may want to see all the line items in relationship to their transactions. So sometimes you're just like, oh, well, these are all the expense line items that I want to see for this specific account. So ledger line item search allows users to find transactions of any transaction type by line item. Okay, so ledger line item search, you're seeing all the line items. You can see the account number column here, and it's bolded. So you can search using that. So I'm just going to use the first one here, 11-01-02-01, and then press enter, and it filters by that. So these are all of the transactions. I'm sorry, these are all the line items, not the transactions. These are all the line items for this account. And then I could say, okay, well, I want this certain status, all but void. And then I could also say, well, I just want payments. Then I could use, payments wasn't a good choice. Let me say journal entries at that point in time. And then if I wanted to put in a date filter, I could put in a date filter at that point in time. So let's see, 08/31/2023, and I think it's a pipe. And then 09/30/2023. And then you can filter it like that, just to kind of get your section down. I'm always keeping in mind that, hey, that last 36 months could, kind of keep information from showing or not showing. So if you don't see something, you could always uncheck that option at that point in time. But this is a way that you could, find things within the system and not have to, drill all the way down into the account to find it. So plan analyze, most of these tools came right off of Kevin's mind. He's our programmer. He does a great job helping us out here. So, but those are the plan analyze tools. Remembering that clear the search clears these search items out and reverses, you get you back to your normal state. So there's edit, refresh, export, print, and save. So you could save, you create your little view here and you could save that view. Ledger search. And let me expand this area, and then you could access that later on in the future. So we're kind of hoping that this gives everybody the tools that they need. When it comes to the feedback, please pass it on. We'd love to hear from you. We store it and keep it inside our system so that we'll have it during development times, and when we make changes, we've got what you guys want in the software at our fingertips so we can develop accordingly. Okay, so that is my last slide there. Let's go through and let's review the questions. I know Kimberly, she's really familiar with the software since she was coordinating the field testing, so she's able to answer all the questions. We are posting, like several people lots of times ask the same question, but we're consolidating all the questions and we're posting them on the Shepherd Staff Help Center. So you'll be able to go there, you can watch the videos, review the questions that people have seen, but you can also see new articles. We wrote an article for every one of the views so that people can also, like you can self-service if you like to read and watch the videos to learn the software. You can contact us. We'd love to hear from you. You can use chat. You can speak to us through the chat window. All of those options are available. So, okay. Okay, so it looks like the majority of the questions were answered. Hi, Joanne. I am going to, before I read the thank you message, Joanne asked, can you refresh my memory on how to save the Excel sheet in budgets to import it back in? Absolutely. So I'm going to Alt-Tab back to Shepherd Staff. And so when it comes to managing budgets, typically you create new budgets every single year. And some people enter them in manually, one budget at a time. But some people like to use the budget import export to export the a spreadsheet of your budgets and then import your budgets back into the system. So I'm going to walk you through that process. It only takes like 2 minutes to do, so no problem. So import export. So we are going to export 2023's budget, and we could say, well, we want to export 2022's budget and then import it back in as 2023. So you can say, okay, well, I want to export this budget, massage that data, and then import it back in. And you can also include inactive accounts if you like. So we're going to say 2023 current fiscal year budget, and then we're going to click export. When you click export, it's going to pull up your data in a CSV file, and you'll be able to see it. At that point, you're going to make one or two choices. So what you'll do is either you'll enter in the total budget or you'll enter in monthly budgets, just depending on how your church handles this process. So I'm going to add a couple additional budgets in. So I'm going to say I'm going to make this a little bit wider. So I'm going to say for the education budget for 2023, which we're almost at the end of the year, so we'll be moving to 2024 here real soon. But for the education budget, let's say it was supposed to be $1,100. And then for the music ministry, let's say it was supposed to be $450. I shouldn't say 450. I love church music, so let's say 1,200. Then men's ministry, let's say 350. Young adults ministry, 600. Women's ministry, 700. Church at large, 200. And social concerns, 150. So I've typed all of my budgets in there, and I'm just going to type in a total budget instead of typing in each month. And I'm just going to do the spread where it takes this amount, divides it by 12, and then puts it in the monthly amount. So then I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to go to Save As. And instead of CSV, I'm going to save it as an XLSX file. And I'm going to save it to my desktop. So I'm going to say browse over here since I don't think it'll take me to desktop. So this PC, desktop, and here's my file, and then open. So I'm on desktop, and then I'm going to save it. Okay, so I'm going to save it to my desktop. Then once it saves as an XLSX file, I can close the file, go to import, and then I can tell it, okay, well, override existing budgets. Like I had a few budgets in there, but if I want to override all the budgets, I can do that. And I'm going to import by yearly totals since I didn't put in monthly totals. Fiscal year is 2023. Going forward, like probably right now, people are really importing budgets for 2024. So why don't we say that we're going to make these our 2024 budget? We took the 2023 budget, we're going to make it our 2024 budget. Then I'm going to click import. It'll take me to this window where I go and find my file, 11 o'clock, and then click open. Then it's going to take just a second. It'll work through the process. And then it's going to give me a message. Successfully, hopefully. There we go. Budget records updated successfully. Then I can go to, let's go to budgeting. Here we go. Perfect. So we're going to use another one of our plan analyze tools next year, 2024. And then these are all of the budgets that we imported at that point in time. So I think we just did the some of the income budgets. So we didn't have any ones that had zeros or anything like that. So that's how you would export and then import your budgets. Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much, Brian. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Joanne. Can we re-import a budget if changes are made? Hi, Marilyn. Marilyn asks, can we re-import a budget if changes are made? Yes, you can. You can re-import that budget over and over again. So there's like, even in the building when we do our budgets, you know, like you submit it to your supervisor, you go through the process, and then tweaks are made and things are resubmitted. You know, there's lots of people involved in it. So absolutely, you can resubmit that. You can re-import it and put it into the system again. Okay, thank you so much. Really appreciate it, Margaret. Okay, I do want to thank everybody for attending. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. I know it's not easy to cut out 4 hours of your week. We all have a lot of stuff going on, and everybody's busy. You know, so thank you so much for just taking time and spending time with us and using the software and supporting us for all of these years. We really appreciate it. Oh, that's a good question. So Lori asked, would it be best to start a new month? I'm going to say start at, would it be best to start, I'm going to reverse your question just a little bit, Lori. Would it be best to start with 9.0 at the start of a month instead of the middle of the month? That's a really good question. I think it's personal preference. I probably would lean a little bit towards doing it at the start of a month because, or the first few days of the month, because if you're printing end of month reports, there might be just a little bit of a learning curve, and you might be able to get your reports out and then spend the next month kind of getting familiar with the software a little bit, getting your reports together to be able to get those out to the next month. So I do think there's value in maybe waiting a few days until you get to the start of the next month to install it. I also think it's really important to coordinate with your team. You don't want to make changes and surprise anyone. So yeah, I would agree with that. Okay. Well, it looks like we're winding down on questions, so I'll go ahead and wrap up. You guys have our contact information. Please reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. And I hope everybody has a wonderful lunch. It's getting real close here. All right, talk to everyone soon. Thank you so much for joining me, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.